Hello everyone, Ted Simpson here, new hat, and I'm going to set this new hat aside so it doesn't get paint all over it, like everything else I own. Here we are doing another painting. I've got my 12 by 16 canvas set up, landscape formation. I got a mostly clean brush here. I think it has a touch of the color from my last clean out there. Sometimes I do my paintings in batches here. That way I can get all my work done. Then we go out and relax outside and take in the nature in the afternoon. So sometimes I paint a lot. Sometimes I take a break. Gotta recharge the imagination batteries once in a while. But sometimes deadlines are deadlines and you gotta paint. Sometimes you may not feel like painting. But once you get going, you're glad you did. How's that? How's that for a quote or two? Okay, thin, even coat of the liquid white. Nice little fingerprint, that's all we're looking for. Now, if you saw my last video, or one of my last videos, look at this mess. I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with it. I didn't even clean my brushes. I might use them again. So, what are we going to do? We're going to take a very small amount of some Prussian, phthalo blue. Ooh, almost got my blues mixed up, huh? And just drop it in. I'm wiping most of that blue out of my brush, and then just giving it a quick softening. That's it. I come over here, I get a little bit of the black, and I tap and move my brush a little bit to work it into the brush, a little bit of the black and blue. Just something to make it a little darker. Push it across. Let those two colors kind of meld together at the edge. You know, if you need to, you can always come back and strengthen it up. Sometimes you pick up that liquid white, and the more you mess with it, it starts to lighten, and it will keep lightening until you knock some of the excess paint off. There you go. See? Easy to make it darker. And then maybe down here, I think there was a little something there. That's it. Alright, so I am going to clean my brush super quick. I got 4 other dirty brushes, so I might as well clean this one. Got my paint thinner, got my bucket. There we go. Get that clean brush. A little bit more. And I'm going to come over here and pick up just a little bit of the yellow ochre, tap it into the bristles. Maybe just the slightest amount of color right here. Putting it on and blending it into that liquid white, and at the same time, because I faded out that blue here, we shouldn't really get any color mix here. We don't want to turn anything green. There we go. As long as you don't mess with it too much, you should be alright. Okay, so I've got my black, some white, and just a touch of the blue. see about making some mega clouds. Kind of a whole big thing here today of just stirring on all the shadows here. And we're just trying to make a basically fluffy, blooming type effect here. Sort of moving the brush in circles and creating some shapes. As long as it looks interesting here. All this down here is going to get covered up and blended. And let's see, I think we had our kind of another mass of clouds coming out this way. And then just sort of give it a little stir. That's it. Look at that. Big old set of clouds for sure. Now, wipe most of that paint out of that big old 2-inch brush and just using a few of the bristles. Look how I'm just sort of dancing it around, giving it a little wind up, mixing some colors, moving some colors, softening everything. Not blending it all away, just giving a good wind up. Just so it's not super chunky on there. Okay, before I go on too much further, I do have to do a little bit of palette maintenance. And the easiest way I do it here is just taking my knife, scraping the bulk, and then taking my dirty paper towel and just giving it a quick buff. Whether you're using a palette or just some palette paper perhaps, take a moment there if it's in your way. Trying to work around a color you don't want, things can get a little weird. And you don't really have the room to let the brush move as it needs to. Okay, let's clean that big old 1-inch brush. I don't need that dark color in it right now. Lots of tapping, lots of stirring, lots of shaking, lots of double beating. Because we have to make fluffy clouds. How do we make the fluffy clouds? Well, I tell you, you need a lot of paint. So I'm holding my brush in such a way that you can see here how I'm pulling it. Notice how the handle is still pointing up, but bending those bristles. Getting that color, pulling some out so you got some nice chunkiness there. Look at that chunkage. Look at all those lacy effects. Lots of paint. I come over here, I pick up a little bit of the bright red. It looks more white on the palette, you know, but a little bit of a pink to it, just a touch. Turn that brush so that corner is facing up. That way, I can make some little circles, just pushing some color slightly above the dark. Always loading and unloading. There is some thick paint here, okay? You gotta put on enough so that we can see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this 2-inch brush as my blender, but you can use whatever brush you want. All I'm using is a few bristles to soften the bottom of this little pile here. Little pile of highlight. And then I just work in stages here, picking up some color, making some little fluffy marks here, pushing, getting that paint off, but stopping and reloading as I need to. We gotta use a lot of paint. Every bit of this highlight uses a lot of paint. So I'm gonna stop, and then just barely touching. I don't want to wipe or stir that paint into the dark. Just want to soften can, if need be, do your little fluff. That's a sort of a C shape, barely touching. And any marks you got after that, you give it a quick cross across, and then that's it. We're gonna move on. Telling you, as I tell my students here, fooling around with it, too much is what's going to cause you problems here. You got to get it on, blend it, and then leave it alone. Some bright colors here. One little section at a time. I'm going to stop. Now, most importantly here, I like to soften that bottom. Do you see how it goes from the thick, pinkish white right on down to the shadows? That way you can come back and add more fluffy bits here and there, overlapping some of the previous blended parts, and that's what gives you that depth in your clouds. Working one cloud feature at a time. Look at that, you can go the other way too if you're feeling fancy. A couple of crisscrosses. Now, we've got some stuff over here. I pulled this color down so much here, sometimes it's hard to load the knife. So I just stop and turn, get the paint, turn it over, get it back up into a pile. Look at that, now I can get into it again. And this one here, barely touching it first. That's because the paint is so firm on there. But as you start running out, you're able to push a little harder. Okay? Something like that. And it's always dancing from the 1-inch brush over to your blender brush. Like I said, your blender brush could be a 1-inch brush or a 2-inch brush, the round brush, the soft blender brush, whatever you want. Now a little bit of this color is still getting picked up here, so you're getting a little less pink in spots. Maybe it's a little whiter in spots, and either way is fine. A little bit of variation isn't so bad. You can always pick up just a speck more of the red to pink it right on back up. Ooh, there's a bit. Maybe this little mass comes out right around there. Something like that. Stir, stir, stir. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Fluff, fluff, fluff. And then softly finish it if it needs it. Sometimes I'll go back a step. If it's not soft enough, I'll just re-soften it, re-fluff it, re-blend it. Look at that. The most important thing is we get to see all 3 colors of the sky that we did. None of those went away. That's always a good thing. Maybe one last floater right there. Sometimes making the little floaters is easier with the fan brush, but you can still do it. Whichever one works for you. Okay. Now, I'm going to try to do this right with whatever I have in my brush here. A touch of the crimson, a lot less touch of the phthalo blue, a little bit of crimson, a little bit of blue, all that white that was still in my brush, and look at that, I'm just making kind of a lavender color here. It may go from the red side to the blue side. Maybe a touch of black if you want to dull things down a little bit. Let's see how that works. Ooh, I like it. So, let's see, we created just a little ridge back here. Maybe a second little bump. Tapping in that color. Want it a little pointier. There we go. Now, once I got that in, I'm going to clean my brush. Boy, a lot of paint in that 1-inch brush there. Really clean out the paint thinner, and even another wipe on the paper towel here. We want to let the liquid white on here, our base coat, do the work for us. So I want my brush nice and clean, no paint thinner. And I'm just tapping and softening the bottom, creating some mist and fog here, just with whatever color is still on the canvas. I can go up a little bit higher, bring some of that color down. The goal is for it to be a little bit lighter at the bottom. A little bit of mist and fog here. Come up here, and yeah, I do tap right on up close to the edge to soften it down. But like with anything here, you don't want to just sit there all day and overdo it. Bring it down so we can cover up a little bit of the bottom. Look at how it lightens the more you tap at it. Get our basic shape there. Quick little wipe of the brush again just to get off some of that liquid white. Oh boy, what are we making now? Well, let's see here. I have some of this dark color here. It's black, brown, and some purple. I made some purple out of crimson and blue, dulled it down with black and brown, and now I'm going to add a little green to it. So we've got purple, black, brown, and green. You know, if you were to just take the mountain mixture that they sell in the big tubes, add a little green to it, well, that's just 2 colors you have to mess with instead of 5, so it's a helpful thing. Okay, so what colors are we going to do? What brush am I going to use? I might as well use this old dark brush I already have here from my previous painting. And I tell you, let's create some little bushes here. Get some dark color. Helps create the illusion that this little mass of trees and bushes are a little closer to us. Maybe it comes up a little bit in spots. And let's see here, another one like that. Fill it in, make it a little darker. Can't really see through it too much. There's some background stuff. Now, what color should we use for the highlights? Is this this painting is some kind of fall painting. So we'll stick with our yellows and such, and maybe it's early fall and there's still plenty of green out here along with our reds and oranges. So I've got all this color mixed up. Look at this. Cadmium yellow, Indian yellow, yellow ochre, bright red, and all mixtures in between here. And let's just see about creating a little bit of highlight on there. It's not coming off super well. It's either need more paint or it needs to be a little thinner. A little thinner in consistency. A thin paint sticks to a thick paint. So, there we go. Now it's coming off a little easier. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Maybe some orange here. I like to pick out a couple little things. Change the color often. As long as we get that paint right up on the tips of the bristles so it comes right off. Get all sorts of different things happening here. Go. A little bit of that. I'm just changing the color again here to get a little bit more of a greenery going. Getting that paint right up on the tips of the bristles. So I can get this one here. Oh, there we go. A couple little guys under here for layers. Now, I'm going to take this brush and see some of this dark stuff here? I just cut off that land and pull it down. Grab some of that color that's already there, and instantly we get water, don't we? Just by creating the reflection gives us the illusion of water. And this time here we didn't even have to add a blue color. It's just going to give that look from the reflections. Go a little higher right there. Hit it sideways. Now, let's see here. We can even take, this is that 1-inch brush I used for my previous painting here, and got some paint right up on the tips of the bristles. This is my grass brush. I'm just going to tap at the base of these bushes and such to give a little indication of some grass kind of working its way. And look at that. Don't even need any of the dark color this time. We want this to be a little brighter, so I didn't even have to put the shadow in there. Now you can mix it up and add in some other colors. Maybe this little piece over here is catching the early frost and it's starting to turn a little bit. Conversely, maybe there's a little bit here catching a little bit of the last sunlight and it's a little brighter. Look at that. Dink. Drop it in. Then I come over, I've got a little bit of my titanium white, a little bit of liquid white. You know, if it's a little too bright, you can add just a touch of that, of whatever dark color you want. A touch of the brown or black or some of your tree color, just to make it a little off-white. Wipe my knife, cut off a little roll of paint, and let's just cut and start moving our way to the left, well, cutting and creating a little bit of a shoreline there. Last little bit right here. There we go. A little too strong. I just sort of stretch it out, give it a little run with the knife. All right, back to our dark color here. The great thing about this style of painting is the more paint you use, or the darker the color that you use, as you work your way forward, automatically makes it look like it's closer to us. So that same dark undercolor all of a sudden gives us, a couple of trees there. How many trees, or if there's bushes underneath, it's up to you. Even try to push it up, give a little oomph, a little bit of shagginess kind of sticking out. There we go. Just a little peninsula there. And then, let's see here, coming into, again, just a touch of the liquid white. And I'm going to dull this down with a little bit of the bright red. Kind of make an orangey color here. A little bit of the yellow ochre and bright red, cad yellow. All sorts of stuff going on here. So, plenty of color in my brush, and just create a little highlight. Kind of let that color run out. This thing is when you're making a lot of highlights, you'll run out of your mixing color fast. So I always try to make a little bit more than I need, but sometimes you just gotta kind of keep making it. Okay. There's a little section. Reload. More section right there. Maybe things start changing a little bit as I'm getting my way down, so I add a little bit of red here and there. I tell you what, one thing I'm going to try, a little bit of just the pure bright red. This time I'm just stippling with my 1-inch brush. And let's add a little sparkler to this one back here, a little tree off by itself. Kind of gets overlapped by this one in the front. My brush is starting to get a little bit all stuck together here. Once that happens, everything does start turning to mud a little bit. You gotta be careful. Then, a little bit of the pure yellow again into that nice bright yellow. Let's put a couple little sparklers here on the outside. There we go. Now, let us take some of this, grab some of it, pull down. And soften. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to come back to my grass brush here. Plenty of color here. Add some greenery. Maybe even a touch of blue to make a greenery. Plenty of color up on those tips of the bristles again. And let's make a little grass on this side. Coming in, just tap. Getting a lay of the land built in here. There you go. And if it's not too bright, well, you can always come back over it now that you've got like the base on there, a base of color. Come back and change it up, add a little sparkle to it. There you go. Once again, take a little titanium white, thin down, and cut in a little indication of a water line. I always like to make sure that it's not just a straight line. You know, just drop down a little bit, give it a little life there. What do we got? What do we got? We got room, I think, here for a whole nother section. Boom, 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 boom. Look at that. And look at that. We just turned this from a lake to a river, maybe. Just some dark color right there. Now, before I go too much further, I want to show you here. That brush was getting awfully muddy. Got a lot of dirty color up in there. Look at how those bristles are just like a pure chisel. So, I stop, I clean, I squeegee out, I devil beat. And look at that, our brush is nice and clean and ready to be loaded again. So, before I do that, let's gather up some of this color here. There's a nice thin down green. I got a little bit of yellow here still. My Indian yellow and yellow ochre are all kind of mixed. And the bright red's just kind of off on its own. So, maybe we'll just try to keep this a little bit simple. Take a little bit of the yellow. Make sure I got enough here to make a nice bright yellow shape here. Then I'll switch it up, add a little bit of the yellow ochre. And just work my way down, maybe a touch of that greenery. There we go. Into that bright yellow, touch of my green. Gotta make some of that grass. I'm really digging making this little tappy grass with this 1-inch brush lately. It's a fun little trick. It definitely takes practice. I just want this to fade off into the dark here. So it's highlighting, it's just getting less and less bright. That way I can come back with my lighter color and I can add a couple little sparklers here and there. See? There we go. Alright, so nice little scene brewing here. Maybe to add to that little scene, we'll have a nice tree here in the foreground. Come in here. Clean up the side just a little bit. I'm talking just width-wise here. You know, the edges can be a little rough. They don't need to be perfectly straight. I'm just trying to go for a little narrower at the bottom. I'm sorry, a little wider at the bottom, narrower as we go up. Okay. Got my liner brush, a little bit of paint thinner, a little bit of plain old Van Dyke brown. Let's make a couple of branches here before making our trunk highlights. What the heck? Sometimes I'll mix it up. Oh, let's see. So a little bit wider here. Very, very thin color. We want it to just flow right off the brush here. If it doesn't flow off the brush, you're going to want to keep painting over it. So then things start to get a little worse the more you try to go over it. The branches will blow out, it'll start giving you some weird stuff happening here. So trick is try to move on. Get another brush full of thinner, thin down a little bit more, and then just keep going, you know. Now this tree here, branches are getting a little bit narrower as we go out. There we go. Without really getting too much into it here, I'm going to just stop and take a little bit of dark sienna, white, Van Dyke brown, very loosely mix them together, get a little roll of color on it, and let's add a little bit of highlight, just barely touching. I often wipe the knife and reload, because you pick up a little bit of this Van Dyke brown as you go, and it can get a little away from you. Add a little bit of white if you want it brighter in spots. Something simple. And once in a while, you add a little bob twig down here. Can't forget, one last step here is to hide that foot. And there we go. Pretty evocative painting here. It looks like crazy storms are coming right before fall, all those fall rainstorms, I guess. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.